Alright, this video will be about making inferences with textual support. By the end of the video, you will understand what it means to make an inference, what textual evidence or support is, as well as have some practice making inferences and providing the textual evidence or support. As usual, make sure you stop and take notes when you see the pencil or any other time that you need to. Use the rule of 5 and pause whenever you see the pause button or as often as you need it. To start out with, we're going to watch a quick mini video. Now, because I did not make this video, there won't be a pencil to mark where you're supposed to take notes. So you're going to need to look for 3 things and pause and write things down as you go through this video. First of all, you're going to want to look for the definition of inference. Remember to use the rule of 5 as the video uses quite a long definition. There will be a practice example. Please follow the instructions in the video. And finally, you're going to look for the definition of textual evidence or support. Now, the video was going to use the word explicit. And sometimes when students think of the word explicit, they think of lyrics that are inappropriate. But in this case, that's not what explicit means. Anytime the person who created this video uses the word explicit, she's going to mean said directly or obviously. So if you explicitly explain something to someone, that means that you're very clearly detailing exactly what they need to do. Let's watch the video.
This video is all about making inferences. By the end of this video, you will be able to define the word inference, define textual evidence, read closely in a text to make inferences, and analyze an author's words to determine multiple pieces of textual evidence that support your inferences. So, you might be asking, what is an inference? The fact is, you make inferences every single day, usually without even realizing it. For example, if you sit down next to your best friend at lunch and she moves to another table, you might infer that she is angry at you, or that you smell funny. Or, if you get home from school and your dog jumps up and starts licking your face at the door, you can infer that he is happy to see you. Basically, an inference is an educated guess based on the evidence that is right in front of us, combined with our past experiences. Inferences are definitely required in everyday life, but they are also required when we are reading, watching movies, and even listening to music. In your notes, list 3 inferences that you can make from this picture. Good job! Good readers are constantly making inferences as they read literature or informational texts. This is because writers don't always tell us everything explicitly. They want us to think a little bit about what we are reading. For example, read the following paragraph with me as I read it aloud. Katie was excited about tonight. Happily, she put on her big red shoes and bright yellow outfit. Her mom helped Katie paint her face with a big red circle on each cheek. Just before Katie ran out the door to meet her friends, she attached her large squeaky nose and placed a bright blue pointy hat on top of her head. She grabbed an empty bag and went out into the night. Notice that this paragraph never tells us explicitly that Katie is going out trick-or-treating for Halloween. But we immediately make that inference because of the details that the author has provided. The author tells us that Katie's mom is helping her to paint her face white with big red circles. We know from personal experience, like seeing normal people in the real world, that this is not ordinary makeup. So we know that it must be a special occasion. But she's running out the door to meet her friends. So she doesn't seem to be in a play, because we know from experience that plays are usually performed indoors. But it's that last sentence that really helps us to make the inference. Katie grabbed an empty bag and went out into the night. Because most people have been trick-or-treating, or at least seen others do it on TV or in movies, we know from our experiences that this means it's Halloween. These details that lead us to that conclusion are what we call textual evidence. Textual evidence is specific information from a text that we use to support our inferences. Now that you understand how to make inferences and use textual evidence to support them, you're ready to take the quiz over inferences and textual evidence.
Created using Powtoon.
Okay, so there won't actually be a quiz. That was just from that person's video. But let's look at some other definitions for inference. On your guided notes, I'm going to ask you to pick one that makes the most sense to you and write it down on your note page and explain why you think it helps you understand what an inference is. So here are your choices. Number one, making an inference means to read between the lines. Choice number two, an inference is a meaning that is suggested rather than directly stated. Number three, inferences are implied through clues that lead the reader to make assumptions and draw conclusions. And your fourth choice, when a reader adds information that he or she already knows to what is stated, the reader is making an inference. So again, pick one of those and write it down, and then explain in your notes why you chose that one. All right, so now that we know what an inference is and what that textual evidence or support looks like, I want to talk about why it's important to infer. And there's two basic reasons. First of all, inferring allows us to understand the story better. So we understand why characters are doing the things that they're doing, as well as what we think is actually going on. Without making those inferences, sometimes we can be left lost or confused. Another reason is that it helps us to predict what we think might come next. That adds excitement to the reading because we want to find out if our inference is correct or not. Okay, let's do some visual inference practice. We'll look at a couple of pictures and decide what we think is going on here. Let's look at the first one. Okay, so the question is, why is this man on the floor and what makes you think so? So go to your guided notes and you'll see that there are sentence frames to help you with this. Please use those as you to complete the sentences to answer the two questions. Okay, here's another picture. How do you think this boy feels about his dinner? What makes you think so? Again, pause and use the sentence frames on your guided notes to answer these two questions. All right, now let's look at some reading inference practices where we're reading a passage to make an inference and then provide the textual support. All right, let's look at passage number one. I sat with my toes in the hot sand, digging a hole with my new shovel and pail. I turned to grab my sandwich and noticed a seagull flying away with it. Since I had no lunch, I grabbed my snorkel and headed into the waves. Okay, so in your guided notes, number one, where is this person? And number two, give at least two examples of textual support. In other words, what specific clues from the text show that your inference is right? So pause and take a minute to write that down. Okay, if you wrote down the beach, you're right. And possibly some of those textual evidence or textual support would be like talking about seagulls, waves, and sand. Let's look at another one. Passage number two. I waited patiently for my dinner to be brought to the table. All of our food was carried over on a big round tray. Lots of other families were eating dinner also. When we were through, Dad left the waitress money. Okay, same questions. Where is this person? And give two examples of textual support. Pause and take care of that right now. Okay, so you should have gotten that this is a restaurant, and some of the clues may have been the waitress, waiting for something to eat, etc. All right, so we're finished watching this video. Make sure that you have your summary written and your hot question on your notes before you turn them in, and that if you use a paper copy to take a good quality picture of it, load it into Notability, make it bigger in Notability before you submit it. That's all, folks.